Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Big Friday edition, Soccer Morning. North American Soccer Network. We are flying right out of the gates here, as we sometimes do when we grab this particular gentleman. Grant Wall from Sports Illustrated. You also see him on your televisions on Fox. Grant, how are you, sir?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. We have brought you in because we have big news in the world of American soccer. I suppose when we say American soccer, we can mean the entire Americas as a group. This hemisphere of world soccer. Copa America 2016 coming to the United States. This has been years in the making at this point, Grant, and we finally get the announcement. And I guess my first question is, as CONMEBOL and CONCACAF come together, how much of this was Jeffrey Webb pushing forward? How much was CONMEBOL? Whose idea was it? Do we have any idea?
That's a very good question that I don't know the answer to exactly. I think, these guys probably saw, I would hope, as a lot of us did, that this had mutual benefit for CONCACAF and for CONMEBOL. CONCACAF gets an event that involves 6 CONCACAF teams, including the U.S. and Mexico, in a CONCACAF country. Will raise the level and interest of soccer, or the interest in soccer, I think, in the United States. This is a major, major event. Mm-hmm. Plus, they get television money from Mexico and from the United States. CONMEBOL also gets teams for a tournament. A 10-nation confederation doesn't fit in too well to a tournament format. So a 16-team format is, in my opinion, the very best format for a tournament. If all of the top players will be involved, I think this is going to be just a tremendous event.
No, we're all excited. When you live here and you love soccer, the idea of Copa America coming to the United States is an amazing thing. But it's about money. This is a money grab. We call out friendlies for money grabs. This is a money grab.
Well, I think money grab often is said in pejorative terms, and I think this is a competitive tournament.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to some of those issues, and that's another problem. I don't have a problem, but it's another thing that's come out of this. How competitive will this actually be in the end? But for the time being, what we're talking about here is, the market is rich, and they're going to fill up all of the stadiums, and both confederations stand to benefit.
Yeah, and to see Sunil Gulati finally on board with this yesterday, I talked to him late in the afternoon, and for the longest time, he was not on board with this event. He was the guy who said, they're announcing this down in CONMEBOL, months and months ago, when in fact the host of the tournament wasn't on board with it, right. U.S. Soccer. And there was a negotiation so that U.S. Soccer will get something out of this financially, something significant. They still do not have FIFA having put this on the official FIFA calendar. They say that should happen in September. When that happens, then you'll actually be able to force clubs to release their players. But until that happens, you won't be able to do that, and you won't be able to say you'll have the best players.
Well, is that cart before the horse then? Or, the timing of the announcement, again, this has been a couple of years in the making. Jeffrey Webb was saying that it was a couple of weeks away, as long ago as a year. Right. So is this cart before the horse? What's the importance of the timing? Because if they don't have it on the FIFA calendar, and while they may expect that to happen, there's certainly power between the two confederations to get it done. It's not a guarantee, and you could potentially end up with a 2016 tournament that is, for lack of a better word, a disappointment.
Right. At this point, having talked to Gulati about this yesterday, and a guy who's on the FIFA executive committee, this really sounds like it is going to get done, and it is going to be a good tournament. And I don't think he would have publicly put his name on this thing and had U.S. Soccer sign these deals with Dan Flynn unless it was going to happen. They know how much egg would be on their face if this tournament is not what they're promising. Mm-hmm. And I know it's hard, especially with CONCACAF and CONMEBOL, because there's such a history of not total competence in both of those confederations.
You're so
nicely that you need people who are real people in FIFA to to make you believe that this is going to happen. And Sunil Gulati's a real guy. He's not going to be involved in a tournament that is not going to happen in the way that they promise it will happen.
Now, in addition to the issues of getting it on the FIFA calendar, which may be a foregone conclusion, there are some other scheduling issues. I mean, let's not forget that there's World Cup qualifying that has to happen even 2 years out from Russia. So how does all of that work out? Is that something that they seem concerned about? How easy will those issues be to rectify?
Yeah, they don't seem all that concerned about that. I was slightly surprised that June 3rd to 26th will be the dates. I was expecting July because I didn't think they would want to conflict with the European Championship. Now, obviously, the Euro will be taking place, those games during the afternoon over here, and the Copa games will take place in the evening. So it's actually not going to be a direct conflict. I do think that people only have so much of their free time that they want to spend watching soccer.
Yes.
Even during June. And so for those of us who are hardcores, it'll be great. We'll get to watch 4 games a day. But for the public at large, I'm curious to see how much appetite there is for all this stuff, though both events on paper should be great.
Well, you do have the Americans watching the Euros is mostly about surreptitiously doing so if you have a day job. So that is what you're free to go home and watch Copa America at night without having to worry about your boss over your shoulder. So that is one saving grace for this tournament. I suppose that, and this is 2 years away, which seems like a long time, but really isn't. We know that MLS has made a half measure of getting out of the way of the World Cup this time around. Are they going to get out of the way of Copa America? How is that going to work in the summer of 2016?
Good question. I haven't spoken to Don Garber or anyone at MLS about that yet, but you would have to think that they were included in the U.S. soccer deliberations and discussions about how this was going to work. And if you're going to promise the best players, then several of these teams, especially the U.S., are going to have several MLS players on it. And if it's on the FIFA calendar, they have to release the players.
Yeah. And not only that, I mean, it's sort of, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it would be a very good idea, although we've seen MLS do things like this before, and it's not always the soccer that comes first. Just getting out of the way Copa America would seem like a good idea, but it really changes your schedule in 2016. I guess one of the other things that came out of this is the notion, any possible notion that this either becomes a recurring event or somehow augurs a future where the two confederations are combined. Is that out of the realm of possibility? Is it too early to speculate? Where do we sit on that kind of notion?
It really seems out of the realm of possibility at this point for a merger between CONMEBOL and CONCACAF. That's something that FIFA would frown upon, I think. And the travel would be extensive, to say the least. Mm-hmm. Now, we do have examples, obviously, of Mexican teams competing in Libertadores, and I still think there's a little bit of hope out there that MLS teams could eventually compete in Libertadores. Yeah, wow. Right now, I think MLS teams need to worry about trying to win CONCACAF Champions League, since they can't seem to do that, and then maybe worry about Libertadores.
Yeah, there seems to be this idea, this undercurrent, and I don't really blame people for thinking this way, but this idea that instead of focusing on the Gold Cup, which every 2 years is a lesser tournament, and even when it's a good tournament, isn't of the quality of Copa America and the Euros, certainly, and the CONCACAF Champions League, rather than sort of focus on those and make them better, the idea is let's just join up with CONMEBOL, and then we have all these extra great teams, and suddenly we can care about Copa America and the Libertadores instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think this Copa America is going to be a very cool event. And everyone, all the talks I've had with people, if it's a wild success, will there be some pressure to make it happen more regularly? Yeah, but I'm being told don't look for it every 4 years.
This is a big deal for American soccer, and I think that the enthusiasm behind it is all understandable. I'm certainly enthusiastic. It makes for the next 6 summers or something like that to be absolutely crazy and insane for the U.S. national team. Grant, is bringing Copa America here, and obviously you have the Gold Cup and the change in the format for the Confederations Cup qualification. How much of that is pressure from within CONCACAF by, I don't know, Sunil Gulati or U.S. Soccer to give their team more of an opportunity to compete at a high level every couple of years at the very least, rather than every 4 years at the World Cup?
Well, I think if you're the U.S. or Mexico or even Honduras or Costa Rica, I think you want to have really high-level competitions that aren't just World Cups every 4 years. And the Gold Cup itself doesn't provide what Copa America provides or the Euro provides for European teams. And, I think that's important. I think it's kind of crazy that here we are wondering about how Jurgen Klinsmann's doing. And, he's been in the job, 2.5, almost 3 years. And the only way we're really going to find out is at the World Cup. So I like the idea of having more really high-level competitions if you can find a way to do them. And this seems like a way.
Now, I apologize for not being completely up on this. We know it's the 10 CONMEBOL teams plus 6 CONCACAF teams. Mexico and the United States given automatic qualification spots based on 1, the host, and 2 being the best teams in the region. How are those other 4 spots going to be determined?
So the other 4 spots are going to be the UNCAF champion, which is, I think, Central America.
Yes, I believe that's correct, yes.
And the Caribbean champion, I think.
Okay.
I go back and look at the release.
I believe that's right.
And then you're going to have 2 spots that are going to come out of a playoff with the semifinalists of the Gold Cup next year.
Okay.
And so, that could be 4 teams. More likely, that will be 2 teams because you would expect the U.S. and Mexico to get to the semis.
Sure.
So that process hasn't totally been explained, but
Okay.
CONCACAF apparently is now in the business of having some fun playoffs like that one and like the one between the 2 Gold Cup champions for the Confederations Cup spot.
Okay. So, but if the Central American champion makes the semis, then never mind. I don't want to confuse.
Good point. Yeah,
I don't want to confuse I don't want to confuse anybody any further than we already are. All we know, I mean, for American purposes, the United States is going to be in the tournament. That's a given, and you're going to get quality competition out of CONMEBOL. Again, this is sort of a milepost along the development of the game in the United States. There was some idea that perhaps putting this tournament here, and it will be the biggest soccer event in the United States since 1994, is maybe a bit of an audition for the 2026 World Cup hosting bid, which the United States has yet to commit to, but after the debacle of the 2022 bidding, could be in the running for. Is there anything to that?
I mean, it always helps, I think, to put on a great event in the U.S. that fills NFL stadiums, and I expect that will happen here. That's probably not news to anybody at this point, but you look at how the Gold Cup has actually had good attendance for the most part, and the interest level in this tournament is going to be on a much higher level all around. So, if you're U.S. Soccer and you're the host federation and you're able to put on an event that really does fill NFL stadiums, I mean, this potentially could get, attendance-wise, be bigger than the Euro that year, maybe even bigger than some World Cups.
Mm-hmm. Just based on the stadiums, absolutely. Now, there's a Copa America the year before this tournament, next year, 2015. There's a Copa America in Chile. CONMEBOL has always had this willy-nilly, we'll stage it whenever we want to attitude about Copa America. Do you think that helps the tournament, hurts the tournament? I mean, obviously they have the freedom to put a 2016 tournament in the centennial year in the United States in that giant market. But at the same time, Copa America doesn't, I don't know, is this good or bad to have them on the heels of each other?
Well, let's give CONMEBOL some credit. They actually went from having Copa America every 2 years to having it once every 4 years, and they changed it to having it the year after the World Cup. So they saw that what was happening was teams weren't sending their A squads to Copa America, including the U.S. in 2007, by the way.
Right.
And so they decided it was too watered down, and we're going to restore some importance to this. And they've done that, I think. Next year in Chile, I expect, once again, all the best players will be there. And then having it the following year, I need to see it to believe it, but everything I'm hearing is all the top players will be involved in this special Copa America. And that's a good thing. I mean, it's I actually is CONMEBOL sometimes seems like this very shady organization, and there are certainly plenty of shady people involved with it. But I think they've actually made some fairly smart decisions connected to Copa America recently.
And the jockeying for hosting begins. I saw someone comment. I can't remember who it was. I apologize. Someone comment that they've been fielding calls from stadiums. That's how this works. Everybody gets in line to host games, Grant.
Well, I think look at what happened with the bid for World Cup 22 and the cities that U.S. Soccer decided on for those. I think we'll probably see a fair amount of overlap there. Now, there may be some cities that weren't on that list that put together a sweetheart offer for U.S. Soccer, and they decided to go for it. I do think that you're going to see a fair number of venue cities because U.S. Soccer wants to expose this very large event to as many cities as possible to try and grow the game. And they're even willing maybe to sacrifice $1 million, $2 million to get it to more venues.
An interesting consideration, as always when you have a tournament in a country this big, travel is going to be a concern, and the weather. I mean, not that South American players shouldn't be used to some sweltering weather for games, but that's always a concern as well. Is this going to get the same, sort of in a more abstract way of looking at this, Grant? And I don't know that we'll come to any conclusions here, but the difference between the American soccer community in '94 and what we're going to get next, 2016, and sort of how the game will be, how big will this be? I mean, is there any way to know ahead of the tournament what we're going to get in terms of coverage and attention and just the national prominence?
Well, I'd like to know which television channel is going to have it.
Oh, Fox is going to get it. They have a cherry deal where they get an exclusive negotiating window.
Well, I work for Fox. I kind of recuse myself from soccer TV reporting since I take a paycheck from Fox.
Right. All right. That's fair.
I'm curious to see. I mean, is that a certainty that Fox has it?
That I believe was reported directly by people I trust. Yeah. Again, my memory is failing me. But based on the fact that Fox is already a CONCACAF partner, I believe Jeffrey Webb has said that they will have an exclusive window, and Univision as well.
Well, that would be. I'd love to be a part of that. By the way, as covering it for Fox.
You're on the record.
Yeah, what I had heard yesterday was that beIN was not one of the in the running.
Okay.
Because I had actually thought that beIN might have a real shot at it because they do Copa America 2015. They're in Miami. They're sort of in bed with Traffic, which owns all the CONCACAF rights. And so that, to me, suggested that maybe beIN might have a shot at it. But, I think Fox would be a better outlet for it, or ESPN would, than beIN, just because of the reach.
Well, you need multiple outlets. You need multiple channels, at least for the group stage. Do you not?
I don't know. I mean, I expect the group stage games will be concurrent. I mean, you can focus on one game at a time.
Well, true, but
I do think you don't want it to be on FS2 very often. I think you want it on FS1.
Sure.
You could get very good ratings, I think, for it. I think if it's on Fox or ESPN, I think this will definitely be a major thing that will draw in people, so-called mainstream sports fans who watch the World Cup but maybe don't watch soccer every week.
All right, last question, because Henrik is tipping in here on Twitter. He wants to know if you think Canada will qualify. They have to make if the semifinals is the way to get in the 2015 Gold Cup, then Canada's got to make a semifinal appearance next year. How likely is that?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not laughing at Canada. I just, it's a difficult ask. And again, maybe their saving grace is the Central American champion makes the semis, and I don't know that I would expect a Caribbean champion to make the semis, but you never know.
I mean, if you're Canada, I would think that this would be a great goal for you. A realistic goal of let's qualify for Copa America 2016. I don't know if let's win the Gold Cup at this point is all that realistic.
No. Grant Wahl, Fox Soccer SI. He is a great guy when he joins us. Appreciate your time as always, Grant. Thanks a lot, man.
Always a pleasure. Take care, dude.
There goes Grant Wahl joining us first thing on a Friday morning. He's a great guy all the time, not just when he joins us. I said that in a very strange way. But we are off and running here on a Friday. Phone lines are open 347-756-6276 if you have thoughts on any of that Copa America information. Again, we are going to build, but from now until that, we've got a World Cup to worry about this summer. Don't get me wrong. But once that's over, I wonder how much of a backseat, sort of how much of a sideshow the Gold Cup next year will be. Because the Gold Cup is, for soccer fans, it's something you care about. We all sort of expect that U.S.-Mexico final. We didn't get it last year. We all sort of expect it. Obviously, the Confederations Cup bid from CONCACAF is up for grabs at the Gold Cup. Now there's going to be a playoff between the champion of the 13 and 15 for the berth in the 17 Confederations Cup. That's right? So if the United States goes and wins the Gold Cup next year after having won it in 2013, do they get the automatic bid? I don't really even know how that works. I'm assuming they get an automatic bid. It's just a strange twist on the way things have been done before. So when we get to the Gold Cup next year, we're going to spin the Gold Cup talking about Copa America in 2016, especially because some of the qualifiers for Copa America 2016 will come out of that Gold Cup. All right. Also on today's show, in addition to all of that, we've got David Moyel to talk about Italian soccer. Juve on the verge of a title. They lost to Benfica yesterday in the Europa League semifinals there at home in Turin. We also have Mario Balotelli to discuss, Javier Zanetti. What else do I have on my list here? Alessandro Del Piero potentially moving to MLS. That's the rumor that's out there. We'll talk to David about that. And then at 11 o'clock, our friend Eric Gomez will join us to talk about Mexican soccer. We are in the Liguilla playoffs. They are happening right now. I watched Tijuana blow chance after chance after chance against Toluca last night in the first leg of their quarterfinal series. We had that crazy game with America and Santos. We've got a couple of other games, other quarterfinal matchups to talk about in Mexico as well. And then there's Chivas de Guadalajara, which is once again a soap opera that it's hard to believe that this continues to happen. These type of crazy things continue to happen at Chivas de Guadalajara. The Volpe fired for what? For inappropriate comments, actions, something towards a female employee of the club. That's the word. Now, what I understand, and we're going to get it directly from Eric, who will have a better understanding of what's happening down there. But from what I understand, Volpe is denying the allegations and left a press conference crying as he denied that any of this happened. Is Volpe going to lift the veil on Chivas de Guadalajara and have it be, even worse than we already thought it was? And where does Jorge Vergara rank among the worst owners in sports? As long as Donald Sterling owns the LA Clippers, he remains the worst owner in sports. But Jorge Vergara is on that list somewhere, right? He's in the top 5? Top 10? How far down do you need to go? Is he in the top 5? He's probably in the top 5. All right. It is Friday. Again, we will take your phone calls. We do have, again, the Europa League action to talk about. I had this concept come to me this morning. Not concept. This notion, this idea, this burning regret deep in my soccer soul. Yesterday I watched, probably because it was on FS1, I watched Juventus Benfica, the second leg of the Europa League semifinal happening in Italy. Two big clubs. I watched the first leg in Portugal. The other semifinal Europa League, Sevilla-Valencia, a game that in the end turned out to be more, not that Juve Benfica was bad. It was not. It was a good game. But in the end, Sevilla-Valencia turned out to be the more exciting, the more insane, the more ridiculous. You just regret that you missed it. You just regret that Sevilla scores in the 94th minute. They score in added time to beat Valencia, who was up. Valencia was up. It was 2-0 from the first leg. Sevilla had the lead. Valencia was up 3-0 in added time when Sevilla scored the one away goal to win the tie and advance to the final in Turin. By the way, that's where the final is. So Juve missed out on a final in their home stadium. You'll have Benfica, Sevilla there. I'm calling it viewer's regret. I think I need something more catchy for this. I think I need something like, yeah, I don't know. Couch surfers, not surfing, couch potato regret. I wasn't a couch potato, but I'm just saying, where football viewer regret. Vince in Toronto, what's up?
Oh, hey, Jason. Just want to talk a little bit of Copa America with you.
Sure. I got a couple of minutes here before we move to David MOL, so what's up?
Yeah, like you mentioned about Canada, that's a pretty big ask, especially considering we probably had our worst performance at last year's, and I don't know, it's just a huge transitional period. I mean, I'd love it, and I'm gonna hope and pray, but it's difficult, especially with these qualification parameters. I do believe when they first, it was rumored it was just supposed to be some of the highest placed teams in the 2015 Gold Cup. But now they're changing it to, the Copa Centroamericana and the Caribbean Championship. Which is also interesting, Jason, because the Caribbean Championship is it's very volatile. I mean, because you'd expect Jamaica and Trinidad to have the best teams. They don't necessarily send their best players, and as a result, someone like Cuba can end up winning.
Well,
it.
Vince, I think that then obviously the effect, the intent, partly on CONCACAF's part, is to make those tournaments more important, all the way down, like a knock-on effect, all the way down. So you make the CFU championship more important. You make the Copa Centroamericano more important. Now, though that one's already pretty big among those countries, but you put importance into those tournaments based on the fact that those winners will qualify for the Copa America. I mean, that just automatically makes them a much bigger deal. And maybe Jamaica and Trinidad decide to send their best teams rather than sort of taking the CFU as whatever, we can just go and play.
I'm not entirely sure if it's a FIFA tournament in the sense that if they ask, Vancouver or, whatever team to release their Jamaican players,
that's a good problem.
They'll oblige.
That's a good point. Yeah. That is a good point. If it's not a FIFA scheduled tournament, then they don't have to release, and that does cause problems. Absolutely, I could see that. I mean, we have yet to really sort of pull out all of the little details and elements of what this is going to mean for the region. And look, yeah, it's a tough ask for Canada, Vince. I think everybody recognized that, and I don't know how Benito Floro is doing, and I see some talent though in Canada, and I think that they should, obviously the target will be a semifinal next year in the Gold Cup, so that they can try to make the Copa America. I mean, that has to be the goal.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I still think we're ridiculously lucky that we qualify automatically simply because there's only 3 teams in whatever NASN or whatever it's called. But other than that, man, it's I don't know how they're gonna do. It's up in the air. I mean, our best forward is a 35-year-old who probably should be playing as a second striker. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I'm excited. And this also raises the excitement a bit for the Gold Cup because you want to see who's going to qualify for the Copa America.
Right, absolutely. I appreciate the phone call, Vince. Got to move on. I'm going to talk Juve and Italy and everything else. Thanks a lot, Vince. There he goes. Let's take a quick break. We will come back. We will grab David Moyel from Gianluca DiMarzio, if I have that correctly. He's also on Twitter, so go follow him. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Be right back.
Flashcards.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning. Joining me now on the telephone, David Emoyel. He covers transfer rumors and the like at Gianluca DiMarzio, and he's on Twitter. David Emoyel, just his name, David Amoyal. David, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Thanks for coming on. Let me start with the Europa League yesterday. Juve going out to Benfica in the semifinals of this tournament. And yes, Juve is a bigger club than this tournament. They would like to go win the Champions League again one day. For the time being, this was an important step for them, though, to get back to that level. And the final is at home, and they don't get it done. Tell me what happened and what went wrong with Juve.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I think this was an important step for Juve, and having the final in their home stadium would have made a really nice storyline. I think what was good for Juve, at least they won a couple of rounds. I think it's important for them to start being able to manage turnover of players more within the league and European competition. I think they improved a little bit with that this season. They had played on Monday against the Swallow, one of the teams that's really low in the standings in Serie A, and they trotted out almost essentially the same lineup yesterday as they did on Monday. I know Serie A isn't mathematically in the bag for them, but they were really ahead. So you could say that maybe they could have done more turnover on Monday to be ready for last night's game. I was a little bit disappointed in their effort in the second half. It seemed to me for a while they were playing as if they had the lead and they needed a goal to get through. Benfica had a red card at the beginning of I'd say about the 60th minute mark of the match, and I felt Juve should have done more to try to take advantage of that. That seems to have been a little bit their story in recent years. They dominate in Serie A, and they seem to underachieve in Europe.
You mentioned that Serie A is not technically in the bag. It could be in the bag this weekend if they win. They'll lift the trophy again this season. And you watched that game yesterday, and I was sort of struck by just a lack of sharpness, and maybe that relates to what you're talking about and lack of squad rotation. Why would Conte do that? Does he just not trust guys further down the bench? But because Pogba and Tevez and these guys are good, but they can only put in so much effort.
Yes, I agree. I think, for Conte, winning Serie A is always something very important to him. Juve hasn't won 3 Serie A titles in a row since the 1930s. He was a player for the club for years. Twice he had won 2 in a row and then fell short the third season. So I think that's something that's very important to him. Mm-hmm. If you look at the statements, too, from him and the club all season, they kept saying how Serie A was really the objective and everything else was pretty much gravy. To a lot of Juve fans in Italy and a lot of supporters of the club in general, the Serie A title is more important. But I think, times are changing. It seems to me that really the European competitions is where the great clubs measure themselves. And I think Juve is going to really start feeling the pressure for that. So I think, more than anything else, it's a culture thing at Juve. Stressing Serie A more. You look at Milan, they're exactly the opposite. They're all about Europe, and they just see Serie A, we need to be good enough to get to the Champions League, and that's where we go for our glory. So I think more than anything else, it's a culture thing at Juve, but I do think that's going to start to change. I think the club realizes that that's really where it's at these days.
Yeah, you wonder, with that culture in place, whether this tournament would have been less. Look, they got to the semifinal. They nearly made it all the way, but you wonder if this tournament would have meant a little bit less if the final wasn't in Turin.
Absolutely. I think that was that was one of the reasons why this was even more important to them. To me, in a way, it's kind of like putting salt in the wounds that Benfica is going to be back in Turin to play the final pretty soon, and they just eliminated Juve. Even Conte in his post-match remarks was very harsh on the ref. I think that was a little bit overboard. I think overall Benfica deserved to go through. I thought Juve I didn't see the urgency that I see sometimes in them in Serie A. So I think it's really more a lack of culture and focus. I also think Juve plays a formation with 3 center backs. two wing backs that are really defenders but push forward. It's not really a European formation. You see clubs that do well in Europe typically play with four defenders, have really good wing players, and Juve simply doesn't have those. And I think the club is trying to change that a little bit. One player they are pursuing is Barcelona's Alexis Sanchez. That's a player they really liked when he was at Udinese. So I think, too, in the transfer market, I think Juve is going to try to transform the team and be a little bit more European next season.
So also some news, and I'm a little confused. I saw two different headlines, David. You can tell me which one is the actual news and which one is maybe old. Javier Zanetti, is he retiring? Is he sticking around? What's going on with Zanetti?
Okay, well, I think Zanetti, he met with Inter's new president, Toir. I think it's pretty much for sure that he will retire.
Okay.
They're trying to get him a role within the club next season. So I think the derby that's coming up against Milan on Sunday will definitely be his last one. I think the news that I'm hearing at my end is he met with Toir, Inter's new president. They're trying to get him a role as a director.
Okay.
It might either be closer to the sporting side more than the business. They're also asked him to learn English to kind of help the team's profile abroad. So as far as I know, this is it for him as a player, but odds are he's going to remain with Inter as a director, and I think that's a great role for him to be an ambassador for the club.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is fitting that he stay there. I mean, 19 years at Inter. That's something you rarely see anymore. And Ryan Giggs, Javier Zanetti, there's very few guys who do that anymore, especially at big clubs like that, where turnover is the rule. So we'll see what Zanetti does at Inter. Before we get to some rumors that are floating around about an Italian striker who may end up in this part of the world, I want to touch on Italy for a second as we head towards a World Cup and some of the, drama swirling around Mario Balotelli. Obviously, Giuseppe Rossi is still injured, and I suppose Italy is waiting on him. What's the striker situation for the Azzurri right now, and how close to full strength do you think they'll be when they get to Brazil?
It's a great situation. I think Italy, a lot depends on Giuseppe Rossi's health. He is expected to probably be on the bench on Saturday when Fiorentina plays in the Italian Cup final. I think his health is really the X factor. I think Balotelli overall has had a pretty good season. He scored, I think he has 13 goals right now, which is his highest tally in a season. He's had an up and down season, kind of like Milan. I think, though, he's definitely a safe bet to be in Brazil. I think a player to watch is Torino striker Immobile. He is co-owned by Juve. He scored 20 goals this season, no penalty kicks, which in Serie A is really a big deal. I think he has a lot of the momentum. I could see him being a little bit of like Schillaci back in Italy World Cup in 1990, a striker that not that many people might know outside of Italy and who's making a name for himself. So I think Giuseppe Rossi, though, his health is a big key. I think, if he's able to play a little bit before the end of the season, it would make a big difference as well. Another player that has a very small chance of going is Milan's player, El Shaarawy. I feel like he's been a little bit forgotten by many people. He's been injured most of the season. So I think long-term, Italy's strikers is going to be really the strength of the team. I think, though, Prandelli for the World Cup is going to look for like a mix, too, of experience. So you might see a player like Gilardino who gets, who doesn't get a lot of hype, but he's a classic central striker. I have a feeling he's going to be on the team at least to back up Balotelli and play kind of the central striker role to open up spaces for the others. And I think Immobile is the one to watch. I think everyone's rooting for Giuseppe Rossi to make the team. He also wasn't in the World Cup in South Africa, and I think a lot of people in Italy regret that he wasn't able to make that team. So I think it'd be a big shame if he didn't make it to Brazil as well.
Very unlikely that Mattia Destro goes.
I think so. I think he's had a good season. The problem for him is he got a 3-match suspension right about the time that Italy was doing athletic tests to evaluate the roster. And the coach for Italy has a code of ethics that if you're suspended for, a non-sporting reason and he elbowed someone to the head right before, he tends to punish players by not selecting them. I think he could make the squad in a backup role, but I have a feeling you're going to see Balotelli, Gilardino, and Immobile ahead of him. But he certainly has had a very good season. I see him more of a player that Italy is going to focus on past the World Cup.
All right, let's talk about an Italian legend, no longer featuring the national team, but still out there doing his thing, Alessandro Del Piero, who famously went to Australia and is in Sydney and has been doing his thing there and has been a major marquee draw in the A-League for the last couple of years. But rumors are he's going to leave Australia. What's the likelihood, and what are you hearing about where he's going to end up next?
Okay, as far as I know, he's definitely leaving Australia. There were some rumors that he might stay there as a coach, but from what I know, indications are he's definitely wants to play one more year. He sent a really nice post thanking Sydney for even offering him the opportunity to stay 1 year. So I definitely think he's gone. He's actually in Los Angeles right now. He was at an Italian restaurant in Santa Monica yesterday. As far as I know, he is in some preliminary contacts with the LA Galaxy. I think that's a place that really makes sense for him. He loves California, often vacations there. He's a huge Lakers fan, which I guess proves nobody's perfect, even Piero. He's very close to Kobe Bryant as well. They're very good friends. He has a big sponsorship deal with Adidas, who, is with the Galaxy, and Beckham. So to me, that makes a lot of sense. Say it's not even the Galaxy, I could definitely see him in California or on the West Coast. He has huge business interests in Asia as well, so would be closer to that. I think there's a chance, too, that Japan is a league he would look at, but as far as I know, his preference is definitely MLS. I think he might even have a little bit of remorse of not coming straight to the MLS when he left Juve. But I have a strong feeling that he's going to be an MLS next year. And even say if the Galaxy don't have a designated player spot for him, I think that's the place where he would like to go. I think, he has enough sponsorship and marketing rights where it's not so much like when Bradley went to Toronto, where the salary is really important to get him to leave another league. I think there's a lot of other aspects for Del Piero, so it wouldn't have to be just salary. So my guess is Galaxy, but I have a strong feeling it's going to be an MLS team.
That would be, you mentioned the designated player spots. That's obviously a problem that LA would have to overcome to sign Del Piero if he was going to require a designated player salary, or if the Galaxy didn't have the allocation money to pay it down. Now we're getting wonky. But if the idea of getting Alessandro Del Piero on something like $400,000, which is right around where the threshold is for designated players, that's insane. That's absolutely insane. And I know he's been connected with DC United. Nothing to the DC United rumors that you know of?
Well, I know a good friend of mine, Nico Shira in Italy, is a very good reporter. He's talked about that link. And I'm sure there's something there. My reservation with DC United is they are owned by Toir, who also owns Inter. Now, Del Piero didn't leave Juve on the best terms, but, I could see how that could hurt his brand with Juve fans as well. And while he had some issues with the club, he's still very close to the fan base. And the other thing that I wouldn't underestimate is I think say it's not LA Galaxy because of financial reasons, I still think he would prefer to be closer to the West Coast because of all his business interests in Asia as well. So I'm not going to say there's nothing to the DC United thing, but I also could see some reasons why that would be a little bit less attractive to him. So that's my only reservation.
There are a lot of reasons that DC United is less attractive than the LA Galaxy, David. Let's not beat around the bush on that front. It would be interesting to see Del Piero here. I'll admit, I've said this before on other shows. I have I don't think I have a solid list, but there is a list of guys I'd be willing to see. I'd be willing to accept into MLS. Not that it's my decision, but I'd be willing to have here, despite the fact that you could argue about the retirement league element of it all. I think Del Piero meets that standard. I think I'd be okay with him here.
Yeah, and I think, what's really great about him is he's such a great ambassador for the game. And one of the reasons why he went to Australia was he was hoping to have a Beckham-like impact, what Beckham did for MLS. Now, I'm not sure I can say he's had anywhere near to that impact, but I think that was one of the reasons why he went to Australia. So his ability to be an ambassador, and he's such a great spokesperson for the league and the sponsors of the league. Like, to me, that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, although he's pushing 40, he can still play. He's great with set pieces. So I think, you know, you could say, yeah, it feeds into the perception that MLS is a retirement league, but I think he would bring so much else to the table as well that he could make up for that.
Yeah, and again, it's if you're getting Alessandro Del Piero at a discount, that maybe changes the equation a little bit. If you're going to pay him $1 million plus, I don't know at this point. David Moyel covering Italian soccer, bringing us some rumors today. Check out him on Twitter, David Moyel, and Gianluca DiMarzio as well, where David does the English stuff. Thanks for your time, David. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and best of luck with the show. Always a pleasure to be on.
Thanks a lot, David. I appreciate that. All right, we're about 13 minutes out from our friend Eric Gomez to talk a little Mexican Soccer Liga playoffs down in Liga MX. We have some moments here. We will open up the phone lines. 347-756-6276 is the phone number. Alessandro Del Piero at MLS. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Let me know. Hit me up. Twitter, Soccer Morning, because I'm curious. Again, I have this idea. It's sort of like the list, you know, that fabled list that every couple supposedly has with the celebrities you're allowed to sleep with, that your wife won't get mad or your husband won't get mad. I don't think anybody actually does that. I don't think I've ever done that. But it's sort of similar, because MLS does have a reputation on some level of being a retirement league, and I don't like it. I think it's unfair in a lot of ways, and I don't like adding to that adding to that perception. Del Piero landing here at his age, coming off of a stint in the A-League, would seem a little bit like a retirement league, especially if he gets a lot of money. If he doesn't get a lot of money, it's a different equation. But there are some guys that you might be. I'm okay. Didier Drogba's on my list. Not that he's quite there yet. Didier Drogba's on my give him a pass. Del Piero's on that list. I mean, there are. I think we'll have some other guys as they close out their European careers, get closer to the end of their European careers, who will add to that list. Byron's on the line. What's up, Byron?
Hey, Jason. Just to touch on the Del Piero thing really fast. I mean, if he was coming straight from Serie A, it would have been a different. Yeah. It would have been a different situation. But I mean, he's coming from Australia, and he's about to. Wait, is he 39?
Yeah, he's right? Yeah, I think he's 39.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a little bit too much.
No, I agree. The perception, the optics of it are bad. It doesn't look good to sign a 39-year-old guy, especially if you sign him as a DP. Now, David says LA seems like the most likely destination, but LA doesn't have.
But I don't buy that.
Well, LA doesn't have room as a DP. But if he signs as something other than a DP, let's say again, Byron. Let's say Alessandro Del Piero comes to MLS and joins an MLS team. Doesn't matter if the Galaxy or otherwise, and is making something like $300,000 a year. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, because it would still be interesting to see him here.
Yes, right.
I mean, if he probably could still bring in people to the stadium as well.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
I don't know. I think on the soccer side, I think I don't know. I haven't seen him play, but I'm assuming he doesn't have much to offer.
Yeah, we haven't seen him play because he's been playing in Australia, and it's really hard to watch games that are happening in Australia. And speaking of that, the A-League Grand Final is coming up. I don't even know when it is. I cannot seem to find when it is happening. Somebody tell me when I'm assuming it's this weekend, but somebody tell me what time and what night. And I know that the date line changes. Just tell me when I can watch it here on the East Coast of the United States if I decided to stay up or set my DVR. Maybe Trevor can tell me this information. But I know that they're having the Grand Final down in Australia. And here's
NASN?
I'm sorry?
Who's playing?
Brisbane Roar versus the Western Sydney Wanderers is the game.
Huh.
That is your grand final in the A-League. And here's something interesting. While I got you on the line, we're talking about this, Byron. You can chip in and tell me what you make of this. Here's a headline of the Sports Business Daily yesterday. More than 250 million people expected to tune in to A-League final on TV.
Oh, wow.
I don't buy it. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, not even MLS gets that.
No, well, MLS doesn't come close to that. That's why I don't think A-League is coming close to that. It says more than 250 million people could watch the A-League side Brisbane Roar's quest to become the first club to win 3 championships, according to Marco Monteverde of News Corp Australia. Okay. Sunday's grand final, blah, blah, blah. All it says is that they have deals for distribution in 57 countries, including Italy, the UK, Ireland, the US, China, Singapore, Mexico, and South Africa. So unless 100 million Chinese people are going to watch the A-League final, I have no idea how they're getting to that number. No idea.
I mean, I'm assuming you could find it online, but I mean, I haven't really seen anything about it.
No, no. So you're not going to be watching the A-League final, Byron? What's up?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's come to this conclusion, Byron. Alessandro Del Piero is welcome in MLS as long as he's not making more than how much money?
I think I'm going around 350.
Okay, 350.
And
go ahead.
He can't be a starter either.
He can't be a starter?
No, I mean,
wow.
He's too old. Come on.
Okay, he's too old to be a starter in MLS.
Okay, and one more thing about Copa America. I think the first time around, it might be something successful. I think there's no doubt that attendance-wise it'll work. But then maybe the second time around, if we see this first Copa America, we see 4 South American teams in the semifinal. Don't you think people are going to have that mentality that that's how it's going to be all the time? There's going to be really no CONCACAF teams challenging them for.
I don't think it would matter I don't think it would matter for how big the tournament is. In fact, you probably end up with better attended semis and final. Well, the final would probably be well attended regardless of who's in it, but you're going to end up. It wouldn't matter if you had Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and toss somebody else into the mix for me. Paraguay, Chile, anybody, Colombia. If you had those 4 teams in the semis and the United States and Mexico had been knocked out previous to that, all the CONCACAF teams had, you would still have full houses and big TV ratings. You still would.
Because I think, challenging for the title, I don't think the U.S. or Mexico has that ability. I think they could match up well against the biggest teams, but I don't think they have enough to.
Well, I mean, but you have to see. You have to see how the tournament plays out. First of all, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, Byron. I mean, certainly Brazil and Argentina are going to be favorites coming into the tournament, and Colombia has incredible talent, and Uruguay has incredible talent. But I'm just saying you have to see how the tournament plays out, and the location will have a role. I mean, Mexico is going to have home field advantage, at least by the crowd everywhere that they go.
Yeah, because attendance-wise, I think there's no problem. I mean, you get Mexico. I mean, you even throw in Honduras. You see it even in the Gold Cup, like teams like El Salvador, who you put in Washington and they'll sell out Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. And, I think attendance-wise it won't be a problem, but maybe just that.
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate the phone call, Byron. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, thank you.
All right, there you go. So we're talking about a couple of different things today. My themes for today, we're going to grab Eric Gomez in just a couple of minutes. But the themes are, number 1, your viewer regret. I don't want specific examples. Give me an idea of when you were watching one game because it was supposed to be the better game, because it was on the main channel. Because this is the issue with Europa League yesterday. Benfica and Juve on Fox Sports 1, Sevilla Valencia on what? Fox Sports 2, Fox Soccer Plus. I don't even know where it was. Don't know where it was. Now I could have gone and looked for. Not that I advocate this behavior, but I could have gone and looked for a stream, I suppose. But it didn't occur to me. Here's a game right on my television. Fox Sports 1. It's Juve and Benfica. Why wouldn't I watch that game? Well, crap. I missed the better game, or at least the better ending. Tay's on the line. What's up, Tay?
Hey, how you doing? I just wanted to call to cast my vote on no on
Del Piero. All right.
Del Piero.
Because he's old?
Yeah, for me, because as you know, like whenever even the big name comes to MLS, it takes time for him to adjust, right? So the season he comes in, it's going to be like his adjustment season, so I don't think he's that productive. And he's going to be probably next season he might have to do something, but he's like 41.
Yeah.
And that's a little too old. And he gave like $350,000 to buy a player.
Sure.
They could get somebody else.
Well, again, I mean, when we talk about the value and what you would end up paying Del Piero, When I say would you accept him at 300,000, I mean that is still a lot of money for a striker at MLS who is not a big name DP who's going to give you 15 or 20 like a Robbie Keane or a Jermaine Defoe. Right. So you could still,
especially like if you have a player like if he was a player like Pirlo who can just ting the balls around without exerting himself is one thing, but
right.
Last time I saw Del Piero play, which was a long time ago.
Yeah.
His style, I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. And Pirlo's another guy I would make an exception for, by the way. Although we saw, not that they're the same player, but we saw, and maybe it was a bad situation with the club he joined. Janino Pernambucano didn't work out here either. I don't know that, or it didn't work out here. I don't know that Pirlo walks in and is a success, but of course I would love to see him here. And it's the same thing with Del Piero. It's more than just about the player that they were or are at this moment. It's sort of about what they represent, the image they present. Now, and there's the argument. Is $300,000 too much to pay to a 39-year-old striker, even if he is Alessandro Del Piero, or is $300,000 the right amount of money to pay a player of the caliber and history and profile and fame of Alessandro Del Piero?
Right. I mean, you have to think about the marketing aspects of them. I mean, how many jerseys you can sell. But I think that for LA Galaxy, I think they're kind of beyond that. With the Beckham and everything, they kind of established their brand within the MLS. I don't know if adding a 40-year-old guy will help moving their brand ahead. Mm-hmm. I think for them now is adding players and then just be more successful in MLS and CONCACAF perhaps will move their brand forward.
No, I agree with you. I think that MLS teams need to get out of the business of looking at the name first and try to find the best talent. I'm with you on that. But again, it's hard as a soccer fan of the world, of everything that's happening everywhere else and everything that's come before, to not be attracted to the idea of Del Piero in the United States or Pirlo or anybody else who by the time they get here is going to be quote unquote over the hill or done or not. I mean, Henry moved here at 30, 31, 33, something like that. That was the same age that Beckham joined MLS. That's about the age when you go, okay, this makes sense. He's still got enough left in the tank. He can be a really effective player in MLS. When you're 34, 35, 39, yeah, it's tough. I appreciate the phone call, Tay. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
All right, there you go. All right, so let's take a break. When we come back, we will grab our friend Eric Gomez. We will talk Mexican soccer. By the way, the A-League Grand Final, Sunday at 2 a.m., 2 in the morning. Maybe I'll watch it. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
I turn my camera on. I cut my fingers.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on a Friday. Mas que nada. Joined now by Eric Gomez, our friend covering Mexican Soccer Liga MX is in the playoff season. That's not the only news happening down south of the border. Eric, we will get to Chivas in a bit, I suppose. Would you rather not talk about Chivas at this point, or is it just always a fascinating story?
It's my job to talk about Chivas.
It's a major part of your job. But I mean, I think this is an interesting situation, and I know it's the biggest club in the country, and everything that's happened under Jorge Vergara, and obviously now with La Volpe being fired or dismissed or whatever, disciplined, it sort of takes away from the games. That's never a good thing when we're talking about the sport. We want to talk about what's happening on the field, not what's happening in a boardroom.
Yeah, but I guess you could make the same argument for the Los Angeles Clippers in the NBA right now.
This is absolutely true. Hopefully people are turning their attention back to the field, and hopefully people will turn their attention to the field in Mexico for the Liga playoffs, which are off. We have all 4 series have played their first leg. The first game, I suppose, is where we should start, and the only game with more than a pair of goals in it. America 5, Santos 3. I'll admit I didn't get a chance to watch this game. I regret it immensely that I didn't watch this game, Eric. But from what I saw on Twitter, it was Club America's set piece was a disaster. And then all of a sudden I look up and it's 5-3. What happened?
Well, Club America's set pieces have been a disaster all season. You get the opportunity to watch a few of their YouTube highlights this season, you'll see that happen. And there's really only their defensive unit to blame, which is, quite frankly, a very difficult pill to swallow for Mexican fans because the base of the Mexican defense is going to be Club America. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, teams might be taking notice, Croatia, Cameroon, and Brazil. That's part of the reason why my voice is so hoarse, by the way. I was there at the game. Very, very strange weather conditions. But yeah, they went down 3-1 at home. They started to get booed on their own pitch, specifically Massa Rodriguez was the guy who was getting singled out. And then in 20 minutes, the team made a couple of substitutions. They switched out from the Miguel Herrera 5-3-2 to the 4-4-2. And in 20 minutes, the game was 5-3. So a spectacular comeback, kind of a mixed bag for Mexico national team fans, because we can definitely expect to see about 6 or 7 of these guys playing in Brazil.
That's interesting that you talk about the formation switch away from Herrera's 5-3-2. That does that indicate that there's something changing at America now, or just that the situation dictated that? Would have Herrera made the same decision?
No, that indicates the style of the new manager. Antonio Mohamed had been Tijuana's manager, and he employed a 4-4-2. Mm-hmm. When he comes to America, the preferred formation is 5-3-2, and he's asked not to change it, at least not for the first season, just because the players are so used to it, and the team had done so well with the formation. The team was built to have that type of scheme. Mm-hmm. So he had really struggled with that, and I think defensively, that has been the team's Achilles heel. They can't get back quickly enough to avoid just counterattacks and fast play in general. So when the team went down 3-1, essentially he said, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down my way. Switched it out to a 4-4-2. Layun goes to the bench. Mendoza onto the pitch. 5-3, 20 minutes later. So the issue here is, will Club America change their formation going forward? I think so. But for the time being, we'll see a mix of that 5-3-2 and 4-4-2. Doesn't really affect the national team in any way. I think the players can play both schemes, but at the club level, it was a lot more expected of them to go with the 5-3-2. Going up to Torreon, going up to play against Santos Laguna over the weekend, I think you're going to see America trying to counterattack these guys and really pressure them at home. Whether they do that with a 5-3-2 or a 4-4-2 is up to Mohamed, but pretty sure that either way, they're going to have to work on set pieces to avoid a similar disaster.
The other quarterfinal series, Leon Cruz Azul 1-1 there. Imagine Leon a little disappointed not to take a lead, as they're going to have to go away to Cruz Azul. Is that a problem for Leon? Something they can overcome there?
I mean, they were lucky to get into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this was a team that was bounced in at the very, very last minute via a combination of results. That was, for all intents and purposes, Chivas' place in the playoffs, but it didn't happen. So I think they were lucky to even get away with the 1-1 draw. They played well during the game. There was a lot of great reaction from Jose de Jesus Corona, the probable Mexico #1 at the World Cup. Just a couple of really game-defining saves from him. But Cruz Azul is a team that is all out offensively all the time. We didn't see that. And I do think that that's because Leon's defensive strategy was very, very effective against a team that likes to deploy 3, 4, sometimes 5 guys up front between wingers and strikers. They'll go back to Mexico City this weekend on Saturday in Cruz Azul's home ground. They are the underdogs, despite the fact that they are the defending champions, Leon. Yeah. But for them to have gotten this far is a credit to them. And I think out of the 4 games that we've got going on this weekend, that's going to be the most exciting one, because Leon has nothing to lose.
Right.
So it's going to be a shootout. It's going to be spectacular. I still expect Cruz Azul to squeak by, though.
At Cruz Azul, coming into the tournament, top finishers in the Clausura, were they the favorite? Are they the favorite for you based on matchups? I mean, Leon, as you said, squeaked in. Is Cruz Azul supposed to go win this now? And I know the history.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that they were not the favorite, the outright favorite going into the season. Whenever teams in Mexico are expected to play a second competition, whether it's the CONCACAF Champions League, whether it's the Copa Lib, whether it's even the Copa MX, the domestic cup, they're expected to drop off a bit in the league. That didn't happen for Cruz Azul. And I think it has mostly to do with their coach and with the breadth. We underestimated the depth of their squad. I think things were pretty clear around the mid part of the season that this was going to be Cruz Azul's league to lose. But you mentioned the history. 17 years without a domestic title. Mm-hmm. Going into the playoffs, they try to tell you that monkey is off their back because of the CONCACAF Champions League. But how much is that really just a psychological blow to them to say, okay, now we're able to take on the world. I would actually look at Toluca, who they beat in that CONCACAF Champions League final, as being a odds-on favorite to win the league, just because they, in my opinion, they're hungrier. Mm-hmm. This is a team that is dynamic, that they were denied in that CONCACAF Champions League final by a spectacular Corona, but they have the talent, they have the youth, and quite frankly, I've been impressed by the tactics of Cardozo, their manager. You don't expect former players to go back to the club that they love and turn it into a clone. I mean, this is like Simeone at Atletico. This team is intense. It's hard-nosed. It completely reflects the personality of their manager. Not a lot of teams in Mexico play that way. So at this point in time, I would still tip Toluca to win the title.
Yeah, Toluca with going up against Tijuana. That's the Tijuana. That's the 2-7 matchup. And Toluca, I watched that game last night. We will get to that, I suppose. But I feel like I need to give some time to Pumas Pachuca. That's 1-1 after the first leg of Pachuca. That series, those two teams, is that the one that is getting less attention, or is it just as big as the rest of these?
Yeah, I think that Pumas being a team that plays in the capital, they'll always get a little bit more attention than the Tolucas and the Xolos of the world. I think Xolos is a whole different market, though. And the entire northern part of the country and the southern part of the United States in general is up to speed with what Xolos is doing. But, if you the rest of Mexico, I still think that Pumas Pachuca is a quote unquote bigger series, but you wouldn't expect it. Both teams play a non-aggressive brand of football. It's pretty stale to watch a Pumas game in general. They get their results, but it's not inspiring stuff. I think last night's game was not indicative of their performances so far this season. That was a good game. I like that Mexican teams get up for the playoffs, but it does beg the question, why would you wait 17 weeks to finally display that brand of football? Still, Pumas pulling out a great result, last-minute goal. This Liguilla has been all about comebacks and heartbreakers. It's been really fun to watch. How long can they keep it going? Who knows? I would still guess that Pachuca going back home and with the away goal rule in effect will squeak out a 1-0. So Pachuca's real challenge into the weekend is bringing Pumas out of their shell. How do they do that with an early goal? For sure.
Tijuana Toluca. I watched that game. I was making some jokes, Eric, and I realized goalkeeping is part of this. But to me, it seemed like Tijuana wasted every opportunity that they had. Benedetto in the second minute was gifted a chance and tried to chip and missed. And it was just, from there, it was just not Tijuana's night. That's a really big problem for them if they couldn't make that home leg stand up.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mentioned it before, you saw it, Toluca reflecting the personality of their manager. It's just a very difficult team to run past. And it's a difficult team to outplay on any field, even that AstroTurf Tijuana field. Right. So credit to them, absolutely. But yeah, Benedetto missing in the second minute, that's the only one I think we can really go back to and point glaringly at and say, you needed to score that. Beyond that, it was all Talavera. Talavera also in the conversation for Mexico and going to the World Cup. You can see why. But Tijuana is a team that, I don't want to be glib about this, but, it's Dario Benedetto. It's not Luis Suarez. This is a guy who is very, very hit and miss, who's capable of putting up spectacular nights for TJ, but also we've seen this type of misses from him. It's not news, and I'm pretty sure that he'll try to make up for his mistakes going back into Toluca. Interesting thing about the series, though, they met in the final a couple of years ago with Xolos taking their first title. Antonio Mohamed, the current America boss, was there. They didn't get a good result in Tijuana. They went back to Toluca and they beat them in Toluca. So that's definitely on their minds. Most of those guys that are on the team for Tijuana were there for the 2012 title. I expect a very, very revenge-fueled match from Toluca. It's going to be, out of the 4 games, I would guess the León Cruz Azul would be the best one, but then Toluca and Tijuana is also going to be very entertaining. The fact remains, if you're able to get a clean sheet as an away team, you're pretty much set and through to take it in your home ground. But this is Mexico, and I hate to go back to this cliched concept. It's the land of anything can happen. Right. And I do think that Tijuana, despite their failings up front, have the firepower to go through. Again, if Toluca gets that early goal, that first half goal, they can just sit back, no problem with their defensive unit, with their off-the-ball skills. It'll be very hard for Tijuana to do anything after that.
The second legs, Saturday and Sunday, Cruz Azul, León, Santos, and America on Saturday, Toluca, Tijuana, and Pumas, Pachuca on Sunday. Do you want to make some picks? Do you think Santos can overturn the deficit? And then obviously the rest of these are tied with the home team presumably having the advantage.
Yeah, Santos is an amazingly effective team up front. They can make life very difficult for opposing defenses, but on the flip side, that is their biggest problem. Their defense is absolutely horrendous, and we saw that at the Estadio Azteca. So for me to say that Santos can score 2 goals That's easy.
Right.
Can they keep a clean sheet? They cannot. So I don't think it's going to be a 3-1 type game. I still think that America makes it through despite losing in Torreon. So America there. I mentioned Cruz Azul over León, Pumas over Pachuca, and then I'm going to go Tijuana over Toluca. Actually,
right.
Yeah.
A bit of an upset there in the last game. All right, or in the second leg of Tijuana Toluca. Let's move now to Chivas de Guadalajara, where again, sort of distracting news out. La Volpe fired. Reports of some bad behavior, perhaps in relation to a female employee. If I have all of this right, and the problem with the Chivas drama, Eric, is that I'm never sure if I have it exactly right, and I'm afraid to say something because I don't want to get it wrong. It's always a little bit more out there than even I'm aware of.
Well, they don't really tend to give you all the information,
right.
So that's not that's not to anybody's discredit. I think that when the news broke on Wednesday, we were all left with more questions than answers. The innuendo and the implicit behavior that Vergara was saying about La Volpe was pretty much spot on from the beginning. We're talking about a potential sexual harassment lawsuit between a member of the team, of the backroom staff, and La Volpe. So apparently we had a member of the backroom staff purportedly giving a female member, mind you, giving the players massages despite the fact that there is a massage therapist. La Volpe, via his declaration, via his statement on Thursday, said that he found this to be absolutely unacceptable because, quite frankly, that's not part of her job description. She needs to do what she needs to do. So La Volpe tried to prove that this lady was giving massages out to the players, went in there himself, and that's when the alleged harassment occurred. Chivas and the staff member alleging that La Volpe made some lascivious remarks and that he was very disrespectful. Again, very vague terminology here. That he was physically disrespectful to the staff member. La Volpe completely denying this, saying that when he found out that these massages were going on, by going in there himself, he backed off and went and reported it immediately. But that he had trouble with the team's doctor and with the team's official massage therapist. The thing blew up, and Vergara ultimately, in La Volpe's words, decided to get rid of the coach and not the entire backroom staff. So that's where we stand right now. There is a lawsuit, however, that has been filed in Jalisco State Court. Jalisco, of course, being the state where Guadalajara is. So there are legal proceedings, and not the last that we'll hear of this.
If the allegations are true and all of that sort of aside, I mean, because I will give Vergara a pass if he is doing the right thing, because you can't have sexual harassment in the club. I get that. And there was a question of whether La Volpe would keep his job anyway, I suppose, based on the fact that once again Chivas managed to miss the playoffs. I know this is probably an impossible task, Eric, but again, this is your job. Sort of give me an idea of where Guadalajara sits in the general arena of getting better or fixing things or becoming a quality club again to match up to their size.
I joked about this on Twitter. Actually, I suggested that Adam Silver should become the Liga MX commissioner because maybe then he could wrestle Chivas away from Jorge Vergara. It does stand with the owner, and this team has been turned from a marquee franchise into a relegation candidate. Chivas will start next season 15th out of 18 teams, and with the very real possibility that by 2015 they could be playing in the second division. I don't believe that'll happen for a myriad of reasons. Some sporting, some under the table. But numbers don't lie, and Vergara has done a number on this team. Sometimes he's loosened the purse strings, sometimes he's tightened them. But the issue here is he has too much control over his franchise. Teams are not able to develop any style of play, any sort of consistency when you're firing managers left and right. This was Vergara's 19th manager in 11 years. So not the best model of consistency for Chivas. He needs to let somebody go in, do their job, and see where that takes them. Whether it's Chepo, as the media have suggested, whether it's Vucetic, whether it's anybody else, this team has a pretty sizable base of talent. Players, backroom staff, despite their issues, institutional backing, youth staff, youth players, it's all there. He just needs to let people do their work at the first team level, whether it's a manager, whether it's 11 guys out there on the pitch. His influence, his shadow on that team is ever present. It's looming, and it's kind of like, how can anybody do their job without any type of speculation or without any type of nerves when you feel that you can get the axe at any time, any point in time. So I think the best course of action would be to force him out of the league or to have him sell the way that he sold Chivas USA. I don't think that Jorge Vergara is a guy who is capable of running a team and doing so successfully. I feel bad for Chivas fans. I feel bad for the people who cover Chivas because, I'm not in Guadalajara, but I've covered Chivas in the past. It is a nightmare. It is a nightmare to deal with their press relations and with the people who allot you time for interviews. This is no secret. I'm not going to get any trouble for saying this. I don't care, frankly, if I do. But Chivas is one of the worst run organizations in North America. And now that's just because we don't have Chivas USA to point to and laugh. Chivas is right there with its former sister club. And I don't think Vergara is fit for the job. I think he should sell. Absolutely.
No, the issue of MLS taking over Chivas USA from Vergara was partly down to the legal issues he had gotten the club into, or the club had gotten itself into, and with Vergara at the head and therefore responsible. And certainly the fact that the club was run poorly and was drawing 5,000 people. Again, all of those things are and MLS is a single entity, and obviously there's a bit more power on the part of the collective owners to push somebody out. Is there any precedent at all for pushing Vergara out at Chivas de Guadalajara or forcing him to sell? Or how could that even happen within the structure of the league?
Yeah, legal precedent. 10 years ago, you had an Argentine businessman of the name Carlos Ahumada owning Santos Laguna and León. He was convicted of drug trafficking, so evidently the league stepped in and took his franchises away from him. Santos, of course, being sold to the Modelo Group beer company. And León now under the stewardship of Carlos Slim, world's second richest man. So, there has been a precedent. They did so with, or they're preparing to do so with Querétaro. Their owner, of course, also under investigation for money laundering and a plethora of other things. Jorge Vergara hasn't really done anything wrong in a legal framework. Could this sexual harassment suit be something that they might look to and say, this is another black eye for the league, we need to take you out? Not likely. If this is all proven to be untrue, then the first person to be liable of that would be the accuser, not necessarily the team. So, I think Vergara is smart enough to know that he needs to be able to cover his tracks legally if anything is not right with the books. But he'll continue to be a nuisance for the Liga MX press team he'll continue to be a nuisance for Chivas fans. And the very real fact, the cold hard truth, is that he owns that team completely, and it's not a crime to fire managers every 3 months.
Right.
It's not a crime to.
There's the problem. There's the problem. It's not a crime to be terrible at owning a team. And again, if this wasn't Chivas, maybe it'd be a different story, Eric. Maybe there would be less concern over how badly things are going because it wouldn't be as big of a club and they wouldn't have cast such a shadow over the rest of Mexican soccer. I mean, look, there's great soccer being played in Mexico. Liga MX is successful in most ways that you can point to. But then you have these little issues, and obviously Chivas de Guadalajara. This is sort of like if the Yankees are in last place. People who hate the Yankees love it, but everybody knows it's not good for baseball.
Right. Yeah. It's bad for the league, and I think that was the Donald Sterling argument for a long time. Mm-hmm. You know, he might be a terrible guy, but he's not breaking any rules, and it's not a crime to be bad, as the Clippers were for so many years. And I go back to that just because, you know, it coincidentally happened, the Vergara La Volpe thing, 24 hours after Adam Silver kicked Sterling out of the NBA. So apples and oranges, but something that the league really needs to take a look at and say, I mean, gosh, do you need any help running this team? Mm-hmm. You know, I think that you need to do it under the table, but it needs to happen if the Liga MX wants one of its marquee franchises to be on the up and up again and challenging for titles. It's terrible, not just for Mexican soccer. It's terrible for North American soccer. There's a huge amount of Chivas fans in the United States, and this team needs to get better sooner rather than later. They have a whole summer again, and they have supposedly a war chest to work with. Now they need to find a new manager. Oribe Peralta is most likely going to land at Chivas next season. That's a huge signing. They're going to go after a goalkeeper. They're going to go after Andres Guardado, who's playing in Germany, and they're going to go after Gio Dos Santos. So, although that's not going to happen, it's, you know, same thing I would tell you guys when the Galaxy were going after Gio. Okay, he's not coming to the other side of the Atlantic anytime soon. Right. But he's going to assemble a very good team next season. Is that enough? I mean, from the reporter side, here's hoping that it is. Absolutely.
Eric Gomez, Fox on Twitter. Go follow him for all of your Mexican news, insights into all world football, because that's what we do. We're fans. We talk about everything. It's fascinating. The Chivas thing is always going to be fascinating. And I just remembered that they were runners up in the Copa Lib in 2010, and that seems like a million years ago, Eric. We are
absolutely.
We are finished for the day. We have no time left. It's been a fantastic Friday show. Thank you to Grant Wall. Thank you to David Moyal. Thank you to Eric. We will talk to you guys on Monday. Enjoy your soccer this weekend. Plenty of stuff happening. MLS, obviously the second leg in the Liga in Mexico. Thanks a lot, guys. See ya. Bye.
Days on the boulevard I landed. We used to kick routines and the presence was fitting. It was I, the